on Marcel Global Talent Acquisition and Diversity Inclusion at Adidas. First of all, for those who don't know, Totaljobs is a recruitment solutions partner. We work with employers to attract and recruit the people they need to grow. We offer innovations that drive the hiring process, whatever the priorities and challenges of your business. We do this all with an important goal in mind, finding the right job for everyone. In turn, we believe companies, no matter how big or small, should be empowered to win the right talent to ensure their future business success. For this research, we worked in collaboration with Career Ready, who are a UK-wide social mobility charity working with young people to overcome socio-economic barriers. As I mentioned earlier, we'll hear from Career Ready CEO later on, but if you're interested in finding out more about them, you can visit their website displayed on screen. So a bit on the findings I'll be sharing with you shortly. Our research came from 4 different surveys. We focused on the views of young people aged 16 to 18 years old, who are currently in full-time education and are exploring their options for the future. Plus, for a 360-degree view of this topic, we also got the perspective of graduates that graduated within the last 3 years. Parents of 11 to 18-year-olds to see the impact a young person's decision can have on their families, and also of HR decision makers who are looking to employ young people into their workforce and offer entry-level roles. So now you know how we conducted this research, let's get into why this topic is so important. The cost of living is at the front of everyone's minds right now and has been for a while. Living costs continue to rise at their fastest rate in 40 years, and the latest ONS data put inflation at 10.1%, and it's not expected to drop at any time soon. Young people are one of the groups that are hit the hardest during this time, with university students expected to borrow £46,000 on average before graduating. Plus 80% of under 25s are considered economically inactive, neither working nor in full-time study. There has also been a drop when it comes to apprenticeships, with over 20,000 fewer people participating in an apprenticeship last year compared to the year before. So what we're seeing here is that while the demand for young talent is growing, due to ongoing skill shortages, the reduction of global talent coming into the UK, the ageing workforce, etc., young people are facing new and increasing pressures trying to access and afford education and get a job get a foot on the job ladder. These challenges are impacting why many businesses, perhaps like yours, are struggling to find young talent and fill their entry-level roles. In fact, our research has found that over half of UK employers say they've struggled to hire entry-level talent over the last 2 years. Have you encountered this challenge in your business? I'd be interested to find out. Drop in the chat and let me know. Despite how many employers are finding it tough to recruit young people, we still see many of them keeping strict hiring criteria in place. In fact, 37% of employers said that they require entry-level staff to have completed university study, with 24% requiring a 2-1 and 8% going further to say they require Russell Group or Oxbridge graduates. This filters out a lot of young people and see businesses pass over candidates with great potential. It also creates a challenge further down the line. 43% of employers say they struggle to retain young talent, with a further 46% expecting their entry-level staff to leave within just 2 years. So why is this? Let's look at what's shaping the perspectives and ambitions of young people before they even enter the world of work. The majority of young people still see university as the best way into the workforce, with 61% considering a university degree versus 10% that are considering an apprenticeship. 42% of recent graduates said the main reason they applied for uni was because they'd be more likely to get a good job, and 34% said they'd have a higher earning potential and that their career choice required a degree. This preference towards university seems to stem from a lack of information on their career options available, as almost 70% said that career advice at school was heavily geared towards university, while almost half said they didn't receive enough useful career advice generally. Pressure from parents is also having an impact, with 38% saying uni is the best route for success. However, 44% say they can no longer financially support their child at university. There seems to be mixed opinions on apprenticeships, with 40% of young people believing they can lead to financial independence earlier, an appealing option in the current climate, showcasing that apprenticeships could be a more viable route. External pressure may also be a limiting interest. Over a fifth of young people believe that people look down on apprenticeships, revealing how misconceptions are still present and that people are viewing them as a lesser career route. So, how can you change the narrative? Employers can overcome negative perceptions around apprenticeships by working with schools and colleges in your local area so young people find the career advice they receive at schools more diverse and useful. You could look at creating mentoring programs for students at school and college, building early connections, keeping your business front of mind for potential future candidates, and showcasing the different career paths into your business. Offering to mentor internally or in your organisation can also help retention, as staff can see routes into progression and different areas of your business they might want to learn more about. Half of young people say that COVID-19 and the cost of living has negatively impacted their confidence when it comes to their future career. And for students from lower socio-economic backgrounds, their parents can no longer afford to support them if they wanted to go to university. This graph shows the areas in which 16 to 18-year-olds feel that COVID-19 has negatively impacted. The fact that every barrier is over 75% demonstrates the severe impact COVID-19 has had across the board. Learning opportunities and work experience placements seem to have had the biggest impact on young people, resonating with 91% of them. This was clear from our focus group, when many of the students said they weren't able to participate in work experience because of the pandemic. 83% of young people felt that COVID-19 had negatively impacted on their career prospects. This highlights the unfortunate truth that young people are being forced to choose the career that's practical and possible to achieve rather than the one that they're passionate about. On a more positive note, it's great to see that almost a third of employers offering a degree apprenticeship, with 25% offering another apprenticeship level. 63% of businesses have also increased their entry-level salary in the last 5 months, in line with the current rise in inflation. Unfortunately, 37% have not. When it comes to young people and grads, though, there seems to be a lack of confidence in their ability to land their first role, with almost half of graduates believing grad schemes are only for those who went to top universities, and the same amount believe grad schemes are only for those from a privileged or high socio-economic background. So we've seen that young people are struggling with the perceptions employers are putting out there about roles, which is even heavily impacted when considering the cost of living. We saw 61% of young people saying they avoided applying for a job because the salary wasn't clear, and with graduates thinking grad schemes are only for people from privileged backgrounds. There's a clear opportunity for employers to take positive action. Ensure that you clearly state your requirements, and preferably salary, making clear that you encourage people of all backgrounds to apply. Revise your criteria and offer routes that aren't just about having a university degree, such as apprenticeships. So before we go into the final section of the webinar, I just wanted to take a moment to talk about Milk Round. As Milk Round product lead, I think it's fantastic, especially if you're struggling to get applications from entry-level talent, but I'm not here to sell to you today, even though it is my baby. Most people don't know that Totaljobs do have an early career solution, and the purpose of this webinar is to give you practical advice. 53% of 16 to 18-year-olds believe that a degree doesn't set you apart unless you've been to a top-ranking university, and with Milk Round, every type of student is welcome. I've already mentioned how Totaljobs is focused on offering innovations that drive the hiring process, and we do our part in finding the right job for everyone. Milk Round is an incredible innovation that has a focus on connecting young talent with employers. We fully concentrate on Gen Z and what motivates them. This generation has encountered a very different path through their education than we did with the pandemic. They are an exceptional generation, and by fully understanding their passions and motivations, we strive to continually improve and deliver, not just for our clients, but even more importantly, our amazing candidates. Milk Round is the go-to early careers job platform with hundreds of apprenticeships, internships, placements, graduate jobs and schemes dedicated to the future workforce. So here are some key takeaways and thoughts we want to leave with you based on the research we've gathered throughout this campaign. We have detailed the pressures felt by young people when it comes to their futures and overcoming the obstacles they are faced with. As an employer, you need to be willing to adjust in order to keep a consistent and fair workforce, and that means connecting with young people at early stages of their career or even before. It's also crucial that employers understand how the last few years have impacted young people and consider revising their criteria and create a fair, diverse workforce. Thanks everyone for bearing with me. I understand there's lots of information there. So let's hear about some practical advice and experience from the experts in this field. So now it's time to turn to our panel. We have Ailish and Tokumbo and Marcel. Lovely to have you all here. Can you all go around and introduce yourselves? Ailish, let's start with you.
Hi, I'm Ailish. I'm Policy and Youth Voice Coordinator at Youth Employment UK, and mainly in my role I work with our youth ambassadors and I feed their voices into our policy work.
Brilliant. Okay, Marcel, if you go next.
Hi everybody, I'm Marcel. I work for Adidas in Global Talent Acquisition. I also support structures with DE&I. Outside of Adidas, I also sit on the board of directors at a charity as chairman of their ED&I governance, and I also am a board advisor for leaders in sport and soon to be an ambassador for milk education as well, supporting the education sector, bringing young talents to their future careers. That's me.
Brilliant. And Tokumbo, last but not least.
Morning. Thanks, Kate. Morning all. My name is Tokumbo, Chief Exec at Career Ready. We're a charity that focuses on social mobility, connecting undiscovered young talent with a variety of employers across the UK. Young people have been the golden thread throughout my career over the last 25 years. So it's great to be here today to discuss this topic.
Brilliant. Okay, so I'm going to start with Ailish. You've got the first question today. So how are you seeing the effect of COVID-19 and the cost of living affecting young people, particularly those from a lower socio-economic background?
Yeah, so let's look first at where young people are overall. In our annual Youth Voice census, which is really a temperature check to see where young people are at the moment and also how they're feeling. And we published this in September, and young people told us that they've got big mental health concerns. They feel that being different is a disadvantage. They feel unprepared for the world of work, and they're struggling to find good quality work in their local area. Young people are still being impacted by COVID-19 in education, in employment, and most severely by those looking for work. It's impacting what they have access to, their friendships and relationships, and their self-belief. And 51% of young people looking for work think their biggest barrier to work will be their mental health. And on top of this growing concern around the rising cost of living, it has left them feeling that they're going from one unresolved crisis to another. And this has left them feeling anxious and worried. And we have seen the rate of young people worried about their mental health rise exponentially this year. And this is felt most acutely by those from lower socio-economic backgrounds, and those with any level of disadvantage. And young people from these groups were most likely to feel and still be feeling the impacts of COVID-19 and now the rising cost of living most severely. And they perceive that they'll have less access to support, but also data tells us that throughout education, access to work experience and skill development will have been less frequent for them, leaving them feeling unprepared in the current landscape. Young people, when I spoke to them, have expressed the conflict they currently face of working to live or working to pursue passions and develop careers, which has become a constant battle for them. And our young people are telling us they're considering getting a second job due to the cost of living. And when I spoke to some young people, they've also said it's altered their planning for the future. So one young person said to me that because of the cost of living, they wouldn't move out of their local area for a job. So they wouldn't move to a city for a job unless it was really high paying. And for some young people, especially those from lower socio-economic backgrounds, the cost of accessing work in itself is a barrier. during the summer, I went all over the country and I spoke to young people in Newcastle, Liverpool, Birmingham, Darlington, Corby and London. And although there are a lot of regional disparities, there are a lot of similarities. And there was one story that really resonated with me, and it was one from someone called Tony Ann. And they're a care leaver and they've faced multiple barriers in education, but also accessing work. And they mentioned the anxiety around being able to wash a uniform for work and having clothing for an interview and the cost of travel to an interview. And I think when we think about young people, especially those from lower socio-economic backgrounds, we really need to think about the support we have in place for them to access good quality work. And young people are telling us that the finish line keeps being pushed further and further back. And with all these things considered, we still really have high expectations of young people. Young people have told us that this has really impacted their confidence in looking for jobs in the current job market. And part of our work at Youth Employment UK, beyond understanding where young people are at, is supporting employers to understand this using our Good Youth Employment Charter, so that they have the tools to make sure that they have good quality work opportunities for young people, no matter what their background is. So yeah, that's my response.
I think that's fantastic, and I totally agree. When you see some of the criteria, when we're looking at, sometimes it's a 5-stage process. When you've got some candidates who can't afford to get to the interview once, they're never going to apply, are they? When they need to, jump through 5 hoops, how can they even jump through one? And that's something that I think we do need to, seriously think about. So thank you so much. Moving on to Marcel. So 67% of young people say that career guidance in schools is very geared towards university. What practical steps or actions do you take to ensure young people are aware of their career options before and after they leave school?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think a lot of the points made earlier were so valid. And I think if we go back to us as employers, we always like to think that we know everything, right? We know how to bring people in. We know what people should be expected to deliver, and we actually don't, right? So that's why we're here. We're all here listening to us and sharing ideas and tips and tricks, because young people actually know how to get into these employment opportunities. Young people know what's right for them. They know what they need. So, when we look at the things that we've mentioned before, struggling to, with the cost of living crisis right now, struggling to get clothes for an interview, the anxiety, I remember myself, the anxiety of having to go to TK Maxx or Next to buy a suit for £100 when I didn't even have £100. Those things are massive, when in fact my employer now didn't even require me to have a suit, but I didn't know that. So it's those tips and tricks. And travel to work, my office here in Adidas is based in an area of Stockport that is not very accessible at all. So if you're coming from Manchester, you train, you're a bus, it's costly, and do a 5-step interview process. That's adding up. So, who are we actually targeting? The privileged or everybody? So with inclusion being, a part of every company's mission, targets, conversation at board level, we have to not only talk about inclusion and diversity, but actually dig into it and create action to create meaningful steps. So when we talk about practical actions, a lot of things that I try to do, both for Adidas and outside of Adidas, is educate schools, to educate teachers on what does employability actually mean. Is it going to university? Is it apprenticeships? Is it actually giving them life skills within the community, etc.? So how do we engage schools with businesses to understand each other? Then also, how do we upskill each other from an educational point of view? So businesses actually saying to schools, actually, you don't need a degree in marketing to do a marketing job. You need maybe it's the company values. You need just to live to the values. You don't need a suit. You don't need to come for a physical interview. It'll be a virtual interview. Can't do a virtual interview, we'll come to you. Those types of things. So getting more of a connection with teachers, so teachers know how to actually describe career opportunities or employability to their students. Invites as well to career professionals, not necessarily businesses or companies, but people that you see as role models within the community. Influencers, not necessarily, I'm not talking about celebrity influencers here, but I'm talking about positive employability influencers, such as some of the panel guests here, inviting them to your school to talk to these young people about opportunities and setting objectives and not being afraid to fail. You know, we talk about social and economic values, and people come from those types of backgrounds, and people come from privilege, etc. But everybody in school still try to attain GCSEs, A levels, and degrees. And for some people, that might not be a reality. So it's not necessarily a failure that you don't achieve a certain level grade in their GCSE, because there's still going to be an opportunity there. You just need to be able to see it. And if you can see it, you can be it. So we need to encourage teachers to hold more open days, career sessions with influential people who can describe opportunities to young people, to show them different avenues. And also come away from the narrative that university is the end game, you know, after school. That the university, we've seen the stats, you shared them right there, Katie, you know, around the percentages. I can't remember just off the top of my head exactly what they are, but I think it was like 45k worth of funding you need to go to university now. That's astronomical. You know, I think my university bill was around 24k, and I think right now it's probably still at about 21k. You know, even though I've been in employment for so long, and it's mad to think. And I've never used my degree. You know, so actually, did I need to go to university? There's positives and negatives for both. It set me up to where I am now, but also it wasn't essential to get me into my career. So what are the other options? Work experience, apprenticeships, career days, networking. They're all the other tips and tricks that you can give to young people to show them that if university is an option, I can actually go down this route, or I can go down this route. So I think, to summarize the question, it's working together with organizations, schools, school governance, and influential people within the employability sector to truly understand what young people need, and companies to be brave enough and bold enough to actually say, okay, we don't know everything. We don't maybe need actually everything we've got in our job descriptions. Let's change it to adapt to the young people rather than having them adapt to us.
Love it. Fantastic. So moving on to Tokumbo, considering the massive impact the cost of living and COVID-19 has had on young people and ultimately families, how could employers review their hiring criteria to create more opportunity?
Yeah, I think Marcel was onto something when he talked about the responsibility of employers changing, right? Because post-pandemic, the world has changed forever. But it's really interesting how we've just gone back to the same practices when it comes to hiring early level talent. So the fact that nearly 40% of employers still require a university degree as part of the process of entry level roles is ridiculous. It's redundant, because there's a plethora of fantastic undiscovered talent that have chosen not to go to uni for whatever reason, but they've made an informed choice that it's not for them. So you've immediately excluded a significant proportion of talent that's on your doorstep. So I do think the onus is on businesses to really think about what is an appropriate culture and positioning for us to get ourselves in a space that is enticing and empowering for the next generation, right? So Generation Z are a unique generation. You know, they're probably the most socially kind of conscious generation that we've had in many years. You know, when I'm recruiting talent or I'm interviewing people, they're asking me about my policies around inclusion. They're asking me about my policies, you know, around things that I just wasn't expecting from such a young professional. So the onus is on us about setting a culture that is fit for purpose. And that culture looks very different to what we had early 2019, right? So it comes back to being courageous. It comes back to being brave. And the reality is, you know, universities are very expensive. So like what we do at Career Ready, it's all about helping young people make informed choices, particularly as they reflect socially mobile profiles. They can't afford to make expensive mistakes where they're studying a course at university and then having to pay it off for 30 years. They don't have that luxury. So for us, it's about giving them the opportunities to get that exposure. So you're right, businesses need to get into the communities that they are based within, and that's something simple like, you know, going into your local schools and doing assemblies, or having an outreach program where you're mentoring young people from the local community. Be connected, because these are the things that young people value. You need to think about your brand. When a young person thinks of your business, what words do they immediately, consciously or subconsciously, associate with your brand? That could be the distinctive difference between them proactively applying for one of your roles that you're advertising or ignoring you. So yeah, the emphasis is very much on the employers, and it's about evolving the culture and making sure that it's an empowering one where young talent can feel a sense of belonging, a sense of pride, and a space where they can actually grow and develop their skill set.
I love that. Absolutely fantastic. And I completely agree. And I think that, you know, this generation is like no other generation that's gone before. And I do think that we need to move with it. And I love the questions that they're asking. And I have that with clients every day. And then we do need to move with the times. And that's how we're going to attract, I think, the best talent as well. So moving on back to Marcel. So from an employer's perspective, what programs appeal to young people, and how important is creating opportunities when extending to diverse talent pools?
I think, again, you know, go back to Gen Z, all right? So Gen Z, they're an inquisitive generation, right? They ask so many questions. So you can't just do what we've always done in the old school, you know, pre-pandemic for the millennial generation. So when you look at career guidance programs, in my mind right now, if I revert back to what I could see in the past, it'd be somebody in a three-piece suit coming to my assembly saying, this is what you do for interview, this is what your CV should look like, and you should always say your P's and Q's, all this kind of stuff, right? That's absolute nonsense. Gen Z are so inquisitive. They want to wear their own gear. They want to wear their own clothes. They want to ask certain questions. They don't necessarily want a CV. So when it comes to programs and initiatives, employers and companies, they need to be a little more adaptive to the people in the future audience. So if you've got a list of schools, colleges that you're already currently working with, is that fit for purpose? Do you have to keep that exclusive? Can you run open day sessions for schools? You know, some of the programs that we do here at Adidas, we go out into the community, we work with different foundations, and we bring schools together, in fact, and we do sessions for multiple schools, so they're all in one place, and we're giving them all the same guidance. So we're not going to just the privileging around the Cheshire area of Manchester, but we're bringing inner city schools within the Manchester city centre to our campuses as well, to give them an all-round inclusive program or education around employability. I think some of the other things around, you know, life exposure as well, and storytelling, you know, so programs that are real. So if you've got certain roles within your organization, marketing, talent acquisition, whatever it may be, tell the young people exactly what they are. A job description these days, how many job descriptions do you see on a website that somebody in HR has written because that is the scope of works, but means absolutely nothing to a young person? Do you know what I mean? It's absolutely ridiculous. How many people do we hire? Generally, but speaking from a talent acquisition point of view, I very rarely hire people based off a job description, off a generic job description. Not everybody matches that job description 100%, and it's not okay for you to match that job description 100%. You don't really want that. Every employer wants somebody that's maybe matching it 60, 70% because you want somebody to grow and learn into it and to give back to your business and, you know, evolve. But you don't say that to people. You expect them to match it 100%. So if you're saying you need a degree, you need 15 years of marketing experience, to a young person, like, I'm not even 16 years old yet. Do you know what I mean? So it makes no sense. So bring the job descriptions to life. So storytell, video content. Gen Z are watching videos. They've not got time to be logging onto to a website and reading loads of spiel. Keep it short, keep it snappy, keep it storytelling. Get onto TikTok, get onto all these other social media platforms I'm completely too old to be on, you know, get to where you need to be. Apprenticeships, reverse the terminology of apprenticeship, right? Apprenticeships in our generation, and I know that we'll talk about it later, but apprenticeships in general have a little bit of a stigma around low pay, not really, they should get somebody in and they'll shadow you, etc. But it's completely not that, right? It's giving people paid work experience with qualifications at the end of it as well to bring them into a business. It's a great opportunity, but businesses don't utilize it enough. You've got the apprenticeship levy, every company's paying into that. Use it, you know. And again, look at your, like Tokumbu was saying there, look at your barriers to entry. You know, degrees, do they need them? Probably not, get rid of it. Experience, do they need it? No. CVs, do we need a CV these days? That's a challenging question right there, right? So I would challenge any business to really look into, do we actually need CVs to apply for roles anymore? You know, do they still serve a purpose? You look at, if I take an analogy around football as an example, does a football player have a CV? a piece of paper that tells them how good they are? Does a scout look at a CV and say, oh yeah, that person's going to be worth £50 million? Or do they look at potential? So again, if you remove barriers and you add in inclusion, are we looking for the here and now for a business, which is just after the pandemic, going through a cost of living crisis, energy crisis, etc.? You're fitting a hole right now. Or are you going to try and recruit somebody that's going to be ready or going to grow with you and take your organization to another level within the next 5 years? Can you now flip that narrative and recruit for potential? So shaping programs, working with schools, companies, other companies as well. So B2B sharing. Don't be afraid of your competitors. The employee and the candidates are not. And then the final thing I'll say on that as well, for young people in particular, bring their parents in. Get the parents involved. You know, if you're fighting with the teachers and you're getting them involved, you're getting their buy-in, great. But then you also need to get their parents involved at home if you can as well. Bring them along in the journey, because they're also an influential decision maker in that young person's life. That's all I'll say. I think that answers it.
No, I totally agree, and I think that's why video recruitment is growing as well, because then, especially with Gen Z, you know, people are moving away, you know, in some areas from CVs, especially, you know, with this generation, and this generation are confident in in doing video interviewing. We're used to doing things, over video. So I think that is something that's growing massively because of that. So I totally agree with you there. So now this question goes out to everybody on the panel. So there seems to be an ingrained misunderstanding around apprenticeships, and even a bias over the value and versatility, which parents, teachers, young people, and employers all agree on. Where does this stem from, and how can we combat this bias? So I don't know who wants to go first on that one.
No, I'll have a stab at that.
Yeah,
I mean,
go for it.
I think I'm probably one of the oldest on this panel, so I remember the old YTS days, right?
Same.
And I think that's culturally, the stigma is historical, because the apprenticeships 20, 30 years ago are very different to the apprenticeships now. Just when looking at the sectors, so 20, 30 years ago, you had a real kind of niche of the types of sectors that had apprenticeships, whereas now there's an explosion. You know, everything from digital to law to finance to marketing, creative industries. The spectrum is growing, and each year we're seeing more degree apprenticeships or apprenticeships as in its own right evolving. So we're in a kind of a very vibrant space when it comes to apprenticeships. However, the stigma is interwoven into the fabric of our society. So what we need to do, to be quite frank, is we need to have a whole marketing campaign on apprenticeships for people to be able to make informed choices and realize the breadth and the fantastic opportunities that are there. Like, you know, I went to university, I studied journalism, or worked in the trade for over a decade. But if I had my time now, and you could tell me that rather than having to spend decades paying back a student loan, I can go to work, develop my social capital with my professional peers, whilst also getting a degree and have no debt, like, where's the downside to that, right? So I think it's the lack of awareness. So employers, and this is where we can be collaborative, and you know, you can work as a sector-wide approach and think about how can you influence and inspire those key influencers? Because only 10% in the research, only 10% of young people are considering doing an apprenticeship. That's ludicrous, right? Particularly when Marcel's point about how many businesses are paying into an apprenticeship levy. So we've got a job to do, and I think you need to focus on three communities. It's the families, to be able to inspire them and for them to really understand the benefits of apprenticeships. It's the schools, because schools are under mass amount of pressure to be the expert on everything, right? So when it comes to apprenticeships, that person who's got the responsibility of providing career advice might not be that up to date. The last time they checked in on apprenticeships could have been 4 years ago, right? And things have changed drastically. So they need that support and that enlightenment, you know. And the young people themselves, we've got to do a better job of marketing apprenticeships to those key stakeholder groups. And I think, you know, it's not going to happen overnight, but if you put significant resource, significant investment, and think about it as a marketing campaign, the same way Adidas would do a marketing campaign around the World Cup, or you need to make it quite vibrant and engaging and enticing young people to realize that this could be my tomorrow.
Love that. Anyone else want to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a bit, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course,
so,
yes.
Fab. So when I've spoken to young people, and from the research that we've carried out, is that we know that young people are hearing more about apprenticeships more than they have ever done before. It might just be that from some parents and some teachers that there still can be a lack of understanding of the breadth and depth of apprenticeships, but I think that will take some time for that to be embedded in. I think where the challenge lies for some young people in accessing apprenticeships is that there are fewer level 2 and level 3 apprenticeships. So you do have a lot of degree apprenticeships, but I think for people after, you know, they've finished their GCSEs, there are fewer level 2 and level 3 apprenticeships. And there's also a disparity in where they are in the country. And a lot of young people we've heard have said they've had to travel quite far for apprenticeships, and I think sometimes that might deter some young people in applying for them. But when we've spoken to young people that are in apprenticeships, some of them are the happiest young people. They really enjoy their apprenticeships. They feel like they're gaining great skills and they're meeting loads of people, which really has increased their confidence, which is so important for young people, and I think especially coming out of the pandemic.
It's funny that you say that, because where I struggle most in my role is getting the applications for the lower level apprenticeships. So that's obviously something that then we all need to work, you know, more closely together to ensure that we can get that out there, you know, to the schools, to the younger people, because the higher level apprenticeships I don't struggle with at all, but the lower ones I do. So I feel like I've got the roles. So that means that, you know, I need to make sure that I'm getting out there, because you're saying, you know, you've got the people there to fill them. So, you know, we need, that's something that, you know, offline we could definitely look at, because I've got them. If you've got the people,
100%.
I've got the roles. So and then what about you, Marcel?
I think my other panelists have said done a really good job of explaining the stigma around apprenticeships, maybe. But to tie both of them together, I think you've got one element where you need to market what an apprenticeship is and get that out across the UK, Europe, wherever it may be, to really amplify the understanding of apprenticeships to the parents and young people. I think we have to make sure that we have apprenticeships available locally as well within organisations, and vary across different levels, obviously, that we've just discussed there. But also, we need to bring it all back in as well to the actual organisations, because we need to educate employers and businesses and enterprise of the benefits of an apprenticeship versus looking for a graduate or an intern or getting them on, not necessarily versus, but getting them on a level playing field. Do you know what I mean? So when you talk about enterprise, like, have we got a structure in place for an apprentice to come in? Are they going to be supported? You know, not every company understands what is required. So are there companies out there? I'm sure there are. I'm sure you can educate me now, but there's companies that can come and actually partner with enterprise and businesses to work with them to build apprenticeship schemes within their organizations and to help change board level mindsets to actually use the apprenticeship levy properly and create the resource internally, not just for an apprentice, but for like supporting managers and teams to actually be able to facilitate having an apprenticeship or apprentice within their organization. Because I see too often the companies say, yeah, we'll have an apprentice, but they actually wouldn't know how to support that person because they don't have capacity or availability within their own structures to manage the individual.
I think when it's done well, it's fantastic. And the company I worked for before I worked for Totaljobs, I actually would have like 2 to 3 apprentices every year, and that was for 15 years. And funnily enough, some of the apprentices there now work here. And they're absolutely doing fantastically here. And you know, there was a lot of support in-house, and you know, as a company, they took on maybe 60, 70 apprentices a year. So, and they were staying there for 10, 15 years. You know, they were absolutely building the talent, and there were some of the best people for that company. And I think that, you know, when it's done right, that is absolutely, you know, it's fantastic. So I think it's
Absolutely.
there. It's just, you know, it's just having the buy-in, isn't it? And knowing, and it is hard work. You know, it would, you know, some people are like, oh, I don't want an apprentice. I'm like, give me 2, give me 3, because you know they'd be great. And I'd be like, oh, and you know, I'd be like, no, I'll have them, and they'd be like, no, you're you know, because my location was really busy, and I'd be like, no, because I absolutely loved working with apprentices, and they were fantastic. And I think the more that you embraced it, and yeah, it was hard in the beginning, but you could shape, you know, you could shape them, you could grow them, and they were just always for me, they were the best. So, you know, me and Marcel have, you know, we get quite passionate about this anyway, don't we? But I think that, you know, it's just the way to go. And I hate the bias personally. So I think that, you know, the more that companies can embrace it, you will see great talent that otherwise, you know, you're never going to get in your company, and they will stick with you.
Katie, can I just pick up on a point you said there, the bias, right? Because I think we need to call the elephant in the room, and there is bias internally within the organizations, and this is where the vulnerability needs to come, where you actually acknowledge that. You acknowledge the association and the stigma and the biases around certain programs, whether it's the internship program or whether it's an apprenticeship scheme. You know, people may not be overt about it, but there is an undertone. And until that's addressed, you know, you're just going to be bringing in another conveyor belt of young people, or certain young people will never get the opportunity. So there is responsibility as employers, as leaders. You know, we need to make sure that, what's the kind of term to use? It's like when you're transplanting an organ into a new body, right? No one wants to be that organ that's rejected by the body. Okay, and many young people that are going in as apprentices, on the surface it all may seem fine, but socially the fabric is not embracing that organ. It's not embracing that young person because of the stigma around apprenticeship. So we need to smash that to really make sure that once you're getting young people in these organizations, it then leads to better retention, which obviously helps the bottom line for the business, because it's astronomical how much we're spending on recruitment, you know, in such a financially challenging environment. So it's in our interest to create a culture where these young people feel empowered, feel a level of self-esteem and a level of dignity, right? Because it's too archaic for us to not call it out, but then we question ourselves of what's the problem, when really we just need to address those inconvenient points, which is we've got some biases within the business that we need to address.
I totally agree, and I think that, you know, even if it's down to, you know, just being like, and you would see it, you know, I'm not going to say that you wouldn't be like, oh, we're having we are an apprentice, and they're absolutely going to wipe the floor with you in 6 weeks. I know they will, because you've been here for 25 years and you don't want to learn. And yeah, they are. They're absolutely, and they always did, and they always did. And I would say to the apprentice, you know, it's a 2-year course. Let's get you signed off in 14 months. If you work really, really hard, I will get you on the top wage. The soon as you're signed off, I will get you on your full wage. And they would work so hard. So we'd get the buy-in straight away. And that's just how it would work. And they would fly. They would do so well. But it's just, you know, and that would break the bias just by being like that. You know, I know you're on here. Don't be disheartened that you're not on, you know, you're not on a great wage, and you are working as hard as people who are on a great wage. Let's get you there quicker than you expect. And they would be doing their pack, they'd be doing their work, and we would get there. And they would. They'd be running circles around Mavis who'd been there for 12 years and didn't want to work. Always, just like that.
You know what, Katie, though? You hit the nail on the head again with Tokumbu there, because young people want to feel loved. They want to have belonging, and they love development. So if you're encouraging, you're paying somebody to develop as well, right? So coming back to Tokumbu's point, you're not in debt, you're getting paid to work, you're learning, you're getting a qualification at the end of it, and the employer's making you feel welcome, I'm giving you a sense of belonging and telling you, hit this, hit this, hit this, money at the end of it. Hit this, hit this, hit this, new job at the end of it. Like, that is the buying. That is what Tokumbo was saying as well, the retention. And that is, for us, let's be honest, it's a small outlay. It's a small cost compared to going out there and creating a full-blown recruitment campaign, hiring recruiters to find or headhunt talent that are already there, right? When you can actually create mini company ambassadors through your apprenticeship levy that you're already paying into to service your business. It's a no-brainer. It's just, again, getting the stigma away and getting the actual acceptance and buy-in of companies, employees, parents, and schools.
Exactly. So, Sherilyn, have you got any questions for us from the audience? Let's see.
Hey, thanks everyone. Yeah, we have quite a few questions from the audience. So everyone who submitted a question, thanks so much, and keep them coming. So one question we have from Kathy is, many sectors such as hospitality are crying out for talent. They are desperate to employ young people. What do you feel is the biggest disconnect between these employers and the available young talent we are discussing today?
Can I come in on that?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So at Youth Employment UK, we actually co-chair a quality of work group, and I think it was last month we had Sodexo come, and they came and spoke about what they do to recruit young talent, and they said that they set up taster days for young people to come and come and cook food and meet some of the staff. And I thought that was really great, because it meant they were able to go into local communities, recruit a more diverse workforce, and allow them to have experience of what a day working for Sodexo was like. And it was really good. It allowed young people to be engaged, and they didn't have to come with a full-on CV. So it allowed for young people, especially those from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, to gain experience, to see what a day working there would be like. So yeah.
I think if I may just pitch in on that, I think some of the challenges around that is around the perception, because young people have exposure to hospitality, and retail is another kind of sector where they have obvious engagement with that, but they won't have the appreciation of how those gigging opportunities or those part-time jobs could lead into careers. So it's almost like that's the front door of the sector, that what they have those kind of touch points where they're engaged in hospitality and retail. But what we need to do is find savvy ways of opening the door for them to get the exposure to all the different career paths that you can have within hospitality or sectors like retail. And I think it's that whole notion of realizing that the skill set and the function are transferable, right? So if I have a passion for maths, I can work and use that skill set in a number of different industries. So sometimes the disconnect is the lack of exposure and the lack of awareness to be able to make that informed choice that hospitality could be for me, but I didn't realize, that they had this, that, and the other. So I think that's part of the work that needs to be done. It's about how do you expand the awareness of the young talent on the doorstep of industries like hospitality and retail is where I see that kind of challenge the most.
Brilliant. Any more, Sherilyn? You said you've got a few. Hope that answered your question, by the way. I think it was a great answer, guys.
Yeah, we've got one from Marie. She says, great points that Marcel is making for large companies, but what can small companies do to connect with schools? I have reached out to 5 local schools and have had no response.
Schools are under great pressure. I'll be totally honest with you. They're struggling to even make sure that young people have the meals to be able to concentrate in the classroom. So they're very stretched. So and we work with over 200-300 schools and colleges across the UK, so I'm speaking firsthand. But I think what SMEs, or I'm assuming smaller businesses, can do is try and find the conduits. So maybe sometimes going direct to the school might lead to a dead end, but there might be a local charity that is doing this employability work and is joining the dots. So that's the role that we play across a number of different geographic regions across the UK. We focus on areas with high levels of deprivation, but we're not alone. There are a number of partners. Adidas work with a number of partners that join the dots with employers that have the appetite to engage with young people and inspire young people. And I think it's about, maybe if you can't get the response directly from the schools because they could be overwhelmed and don't have the capacity, it's about finding those kind of middle players that join opportunity to talent. And yeah, happy to kind of share some examples of organizations across the UK that do fantastic work in that space.
Yeah, just to further add to that, it's exactly that. It's finding the conduits, and even at an organisation the size of Adidas, we don't get responses from schools directly. We find the same challenges as everybody else, but we then, with a little bit of self-investment, I guess, and digging and research, we find those organisations that are connecting the dots, the charities, the foundations, the individuals that are doing things like after-school clubs. There's loads of after-school in community sessions, and we connect with them, and then they have that direct link with the school, and then the school like, oh, absolutely amazing, please get them in, and that's how you then develop those relationships. So absolutely great point, well made to come with.
Okay, Sherilyn, next question, please.
Awesome. Yeah, I think we have time for maybe one more.
Okay, Brill.
So another one about schools. Do you find it a challenge to form school relationships? Do they have the bandwidth to engage with many employers?
That sounds like one for you, Marcel.
Yeah, yes, it can be a challenge. So yes, in terms of it is a challenge sometimes because of, again, the point from previous, schools are stretched. They are sometimes oversubscribed. Teachers, my Lord, teachers, credit where credit is due, right? They work hard. They are in at 7, they are leaving at 6, and they are still going home and doing extra stuff, right? But there are bits of opportunity where you can tap in. There are things that some schools, primary schools, secondary schools, are doing, in half terms potentially, or just before the children are breaking up for certain things, around Future Me career days as an example. And you can tap in and try and support those teachers to alleviate some of their workload. Because for a teacher's curriculum, trying to teach what they're trying to teach in a day, a year, a school term, whatever, is tough. To add in an employability element, they're like, where am I going to find the time to do this? Where am I going to find the expertise to do this? So once you can connect and engage through whatever medium you can get hold of, then showcase what you can do for that school and for that teacher to alleviate their workload. Be very descriptive. We can do CV creation. We can do interview tips and guidance. We can do employability sessions. You won't have to do anything apart from maybe be in the room or allow me in the room, and you can grab your laptop and carry on doing what you need to do. So take the burden away from the teacher so they don't feel like it's an extra thing on their plate. And that's how you then create that relationship, and they're like, wow, okay, I know you're going to be great for the children, for our future talents, and I actually don't have to do more work, because that is the struggle. It's the extra workload for the teachers sometimes. And honestly, I don't think I've ever met one teacher that isn't happy to do more work, which is bizarre, right? But it's just how much work can they do in a physical day? It's really difficult. Yeah, it's a really difficult job. Really difficult job.
Just to quickly add on that, strategically, there's also the notion of being aware of the Gatsby benchmarks. So the Gatsby benchmarks are all about, employment, education, that schools in England are signed up to. So sometimes it's about identifying which of those, I think there's 8 in total, which of those your offer kind of helps the school to achieve, because it's the kind of thing that Ofsted are starting to kind of recognize as part of their inspection process. So if you're able to present it where you're adding value or you're providing a solution to some of the challenges that they have around responding to the Gatsby benchmarks, that could be another way of getting richer engagement with schools in your local area.
That's really useful, isn't it? Ooh. Getting all the ins here. I love it. Brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you so much. So thanks to everyone who tuned in, and a special thanks to Ailish, Tokumbo and Marcel. So just to wrap it up now, we'll keep an eye out for the email from GoToWebinar in your inbox tomorrow, with links to the slides and recording and the full report. If we didn't get to your question today, we'll be sending out replies via email over the next few days. You'll shortly see a few questions pop up about how you found this session. We really do value your feedback and would appreciate it if you took a few moments to answer them, so we know how you can improve for our next session in 2023. But thanks to all of you, the panel and everybody watching, for your time today, and we hope you everyone has a lovely day. So thanks everyone, thanks so much.